You're listening to KEXP. You can find us at 90.3 FM in Seattle, streaming live around the world at KEXP.org. And we have our great friends, Okkervil River, live in studio today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much.
It is always such a pleasure to see you.
Good. I feel very welcome. Likewise. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be here.
I hope you always consider KEXP a home to you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. That's really nice.
Well, Will, you have knocked it out of the park again with another fantastic record, and you are going to play some songs from that.
I am, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, this is the first one off of that record. It's an autobiographical song, and it's called Famous Tracheotomies. When I had my tracheotomy, I was blue and had stopped breathing. There was something wrong with me. Doctors cut through the cartilage and skin at the bottom of my throat, and then they snaked that trach tube in. And I was 1.5. I was my parents' only kid, and they had lost two before that. And growing up, I always knew how close I'd come. Well, that must have been scary, Mom. Gary Coleman, he was Arnold on TV, and I grew up watching him and Conrad Bain and Kimberly. Turns out that he had a trach scar too, where they cut into his throat and then they threaded that tube through. But that was much later on, in the year that he turned 40, when his fan base was all gone and his health was so touch and go. His girlfriend proposed, but they broke up on a TV show. Mary Wells, she was known as Motown's queen, but laryngeal cancer left her unable to sing. They tried radiation and multiple surgeries, but she didn't have insurance and lost almost everything. Poor thing. But Diana Ross helped with her bills. Aretha Franklin tried her very best to help out Mary Wells. And Dionne Warwick did all she could do. And Mary Wells, she pulled through. For one more year or two. Dylan Thomas looked completely pale and weak on a trip to New York City to promote his poetry. And after 3 straight days of drinking out in Greenwich and Chelsea, he was taken to the hospital, turned blue and not breathing. Thomas said, oh, when she walked into St. Vincent's, since the bloody man dead, yeah. And later that day she got so drunk she was restrained, and her husband slipped away. Ray Davies had a tracheotomy. He was at St. Thomas Hospital in London, age 13. And during his long recovery, nurses put him in a wheelchair and they'd wheel him out onto a balcony. And down that evening sun did sink, painting London and the river and that freaked out future king. Waterloo lit up for one sick kid, and at 23 he recorded a song about it.
That is Famous Tracheotomies from Okkervil River's newest album, In the Rainbow Rain. They're live here in the KEXP studios.
All right, this next song was the first thing that came out from the record that people heard. It's kind of an exhortation. It's kind of like begging some friends of mine not to do something that they went ahead and did. I've got an East Coast song.
That is Okkervil River. Don't move back to LA from the new album In the Rainbow Rain. I love that. It's like a love song, even though your friends did move back to LA. I love how you do lay out both the pros and the cons there.
Yeah.
You tried to give them a balanced.
Well, it's kind of comes out of the experience of living in New York City, where you just sort of get used to this level of like filth and discouragement, you know, where you're like walking down the street and people are being awful to each other, and you're like, there's just everything is ugly and bad and cold, and you're thinking, you know, don't leave me here alone. Like you were the only thing that was making it okay for me to live here. And I felt very much that way about some certain friends that were like best friends, and it was just like, why are you leaving me down here in this pit? So it's kind of like, but then you're kind of looking at it and you're like, well, you know, it's pretty nice. It does look kind of nice.
Well, you can visit them there.
Yeah.
Well, I actually love the video for that. It's so bucolic, and you look very at home in that farm out in the country. You're actually from New Hampshire, isn't that right?
I am, yeah. So I am from New Hampshire originally, and I'm always trying to sort of put forth that Granite State pride whenever I can. And I was working on a video for Don't Move Back to LA, and it had this really complicated story with like a hockey team and a candlepin bowling alley, and there was all of this sort of different scenes in Manchester. And then I was just like looking for a guy to play the candlepin bowling alley owner, and my aunt was like, well, this guy that we buy our beef from is like, has a real New Hampshire look. So I started looking into him. Derek Owen is his name, and he's this 85-year-old farmer who's been doing it his whole life, sort of subsistent farming with his wife, Ruth. And the more I got into them, I was like, what do I need this script for? Why don't I just go and hang out on the farm? So I came over, and they totally made us feel at home. They've always had, you know, journalists and activists and people who are learning about organic farming, you know, always kind of coming through. And so we just hung out on the farm a lot, and I played the songs to the barnyard animals, and they gave us food, and it was great. I slept in a yurt. It was really nice.
It does look nice. I love it, but I also love the sound of that script, so maybe you can work that out
I know,
in another song. You don't want to waste that.
It's sort of that necessity is the mother of invention thing, too, where I was like, oh, my God, this is getting so complicated.
Well, I heard that you started writing these songs after you finished touring on your last album, which was right around the time of the election, and also your friends abandoning you. But despite these things going on, a time of, you know, a lot of uncertainty and anger and frustration for many, there's a buoyant energy and a sense of joy in this record. And in and among that, you are very emotionally open and vulnerable, but this record soars.
Well, thank you so much. You know, I think that a big part of that comes from Away, which was the previous record where I was sort of unburdening myself of a lot of like sort of false ideas I had about what I was supposed to be doing in music and in life. And once I had gotten to that point, I was just really happy. And then, you know, we went on tour with that, and everybody was really getting along, and I thought we were playing great. And I just kind of felt this new lease on life, which is, you know, kind of the reason why I'd done it. And I thought, you know, let's just go into the studio and make another record really fast with this sound, with this sort of more electrified sound, just because it's easier to play electric instruments on stage. And so I felt really great. And then the election happened, and it was such a shock to the system. And I'd already booked a recording session immediately after, and I thought, oh, I got to write a whole bunch of new songs because my old good attitude feels wrong. And then I thought more about it, and I was like, what is it that I'm wanting to hear right now? I found myself gravitating towards music like Stevie Wonder or like Curtis Mayfield, where there's a sense of hope, there's a sense of a hand on your back patting you and saying, you know, you're gonna make it, it's gonna be okay. And I thought, you know, I wanted to make something that was liberating and freeing and encouraging and made people feel good about themselves and sort of strengthened and stuff like that. That's sort of where it comes from.
Well, you've absolutely succeeded within the Rainbow Rain, because music has the power to be very therapeutic to a listener, and this album is very warm and comforting. You talked about being on tour with this wonderful band who I'd love you to introduce, but I understand that you all lovingly crafted this together in the studio, so we'd love to meet the band and talk about how you worked together making this record.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there was this record, you know, I think that if you listen to it, you'll hear everybody's sort of individual parts, and that was really important to me, to have this sense of like, a band that, you know, it's like if you listen to a record by the band, it's like you feel like you're hearing everybody's individual personalities, but it's melding into something bigger. And that was a real touchstone for me. Also, there were songs that were written with band members. So like the song Shelter Song, I wrote with Will Grafe, who is the guitar player on all of this stuff. And that was something that, you know, was really such an encouraging experience that, again, we were like on the road doing this little trio tour, and I had Benjamin Lazar Davis, who's on bass with us. And we holed up and wrote, where is he?
Yeah, he trade. So you.
Oh, he's over there.
You trade around on instruments. a lot
now he's playing
too.
piano. He was playing bass a second ago. Maybe I'm like losing my mind.
Actually, he was playing some funky-looking thing. Was that a guitar?
Yeah, he was playing a little Moog that is triggered by a guitar that's actually the guitar for Rock Band, the video game.
Okay.
Because it's cheap and lightweight and easily replaceable. But in any case, so Ben and Will and I wrote the song "Love Somebody." So you know that's in addition to that, we've got Sarah Pedinati from a band called Lip Talk, who her vocals are all over the record. There's this really strong sense of, you know, I really wanted this sort of sea of voices, and I really wanted this sort of counterpart voice too, you know? So, because I feel it's very comforting when you hear a bunch of voices all sort of singing reassuringly at you. So in addition to vocals, she's also doing all that sort of the beautiful synth bed stuff all over. We got, we got into the candy store with all these like rare, weird, cool, funky synths. And then Cully Symington, who has been playing with the band since, I think, 2010. So, you know, forever and ever and ever, sort of providing this bedrock pulse of, you know, I always know things are going to not fall apart and completely stay together with Cully. And then we've got Jeremy Gustin playing percussion on this stuff too. And Jeremy and Will have a band called Star Rover who are opening for us tonight for the first date of the rest of the tour. They're going to be opening. And Jeremy plays all kinds of percussion all over the record too.
You are the producer for this record. And what's your goal as a producer?
To not ruin it. That sounds maybe a little glib, but Brian Beattie, who I consider my mentor in music and life, who's the guy who produced Don't Fall in Love with Everyone You See and Black Sheep Boy and the stage names and the stand-ins, and over time we became more like co-producers. He was always about getting a really great live take that just has spirit and energy and sounds like people playing in a room and feeling it and listening. And then from there, you can add overdubs, but the goal is every overdub has the potential to ruin it. So you're kind of constantly interrogating the overdubs and making them justify their place in the song. So that's a big part of my goal. I just want it to feel human and alive, and that means that it's okay if there's mistakes. It's okay if there's out of tuneness. The big sin is when I'm not feeling it anymore. And I think sometimes when you're trying really hard to do a good job, you can forget whether or not you're feeling the sort of hairs on your arm stand up. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm always going for. It's like that sort of the hairs standing up feeling.
Well, you've been doing this for a long time, so if you can still get those hairs standing up, that's a great thing.
Yeah. I feel so grateful that I've gotten to do this for so long. And there were times in my life that I was just sort of had my eyes on the next goal or whatever, and I was completely blind to like how lucky I was and how much joy there is to be found in just sort of standing on the stage with your friends and making music. And I feel like so happy and grateful that I've gotten to the point where I know that now. Like I feel it, you know what I mean? And every night I get on stage and I just think, I'm so lucky, like I love these people. I love the people that I'm playing for. I love that I've been lucky enough to get to do this. And, it's really, and I hope that sort of, I don't know, I hope that comes through for people. I hope that it feels encouraging for them too. I hope that the audience feels that way because it's really kind of all about them.
I think it does. The new album from Okkervil River, In the Rainbow Rain. I mentioned earlier when we talked, I wish you could play every song on the album. I love them so much. Human Being Song, one of my favorites. The lyrics really speak to me on that. People need to dig into this new record. The videos are amazing. The song you're just about to play, Pulled Up the Ribbon. Wow, what a just grandiose, epic, beautiful video that is. And then the stories you tell. I want to get back to the music, but I just want to ask you about Famous Tracheotomies, which you started with. I mean, what a unique idea for the song, and that would seem like maybe a song where you would speak in metaphor, but you're very detailed about famous people who had tracheotomies, starting with yourself. I mean, where did the idea for that song come from, and what kind of research did you have to do to find out all that information?
Well, I thought a lot about one of the biggest parts of my consciousness, one of the earliest things I can remember, was the knowledge that I almost didn't make it. And it was a big thing for my family when I was 1.5. I mean, I had a difficult health stuff before that, but when I was 1.5, I had epiglottitis, which these days there's like there's a vaccine for it, I guess. But back in the day, it killed infants a lot. And my throat swelled up. They took me to the hospital, cut a hole in my throat, put a tube down into my lungs. They said he's going to have this in there till he's 12 years old. They showed them how to clean it out so I wouldn't suffocate. Had to, watch me while I was sleeping, sitting up and things like that. Eventually they decided, well, maybe we can take this out. And the process of taking that out was really scary. So there was a certain trauma that I'd experienced before I could remember anything of sort of being naked and exposed and in pain and in this hospital setting and having my parents, the atmosphere of pain around them. I think that it was something that, when I finally got it out, I'd forgotten how to walk. I had to relearn how to walk and all this stuff. So I think that to a certain extent that I've realized through thinking about this, that kind of set me apart. And if you look at old pictures of myself that I drew when I was a kid, it's like I always included the trach scar, like eyes, nose, mouth, trach scar. And I don't know, I think in the process of wondering like why it is that I do music and trying to rededicate myself to it in a serious way, I started to look inwardly about like a lot of like what made me the person I am. And I started to notice how often in my music there's references to violence happening to throats being cut or slit or, having holes torn in them and things. And I thought, well, I want to write about this more concretely. And I remember when Catherine Zeta-Jones first became like a sort of a big celebrity, that she had a tracheotomy scar. And I just remember thinking, oh, wow, it opened in this world of like this weird thing that is actually a procedure because it's used to save lives in emergency situations. It has a happy ending or a sad ending. It's inherently dramatic. And so I started thinking, who else did this happen to? And what you discover is that there's these stories of people who the scar and the trauma and what like led up to the tracheotomy or what came from it seems like it's almost intertwined into their music in the same way. With Gary Coleman, you're literally talking about the exact same health issues that had made him, be small and all that stuff, which led to his success, but a kind of a limited kind of success that was constraining. And I felt a lot of empathy for that.
That Mary Wells story
Mary
is so
Wells,
beautiful.
she's a singer, you know what I mean? It's like, it was such an awful thing to get laryngeal cancer, as this like famous singer, and she was trying so hard to keep working, and that is a very painful thing, and I very much relate to it. Dylan Thomas was a huge role model for me writing-wise, who I discovered in high school, and so to get that sort of, and I knew it, he drank himself to death and all that, but I didn't know that, when they were trying everything they could to save him, that was one of the things they tried. So, and then the Ray Davies thing was something that, even though he was 13, it resonated with me very much. Just imagining this defenseless 13-year-old boy, with a stoma and breathing through a tube in the 50s, being, where the only moment of the day that he didn't probably feel scared and depressed and overwhelmed was when he was able to look down on, Waterloo Station and see people going about their lives in the sunset, and feel a certain release from his own sort of fear and his own self, you know what I mean? So I guess I wanted to talk about all of that. And, it's also inherently funny in a way because people don't write about tracheotomies. Yeah. And so, I tried to sort of have a little bit of tongue-in-cheek so that people know that, like, I'm also aware that it's a little bit crazy to write a song about tracheotomies.
Well, it's a fascinating story. Thank you so much for putting it to song.
Yeah.
The new Okkervil River album called In the Rainbow Rain, and I would love you to play some more music. You talked about Sarah's wonderful playing this next song, Pulled Up the Ribbon.
Sarah's on bass
flourishes.
with this one,
yep.
And singing with me on the song while Ben has moved over to keys.
Oh, well, he will do those flourishes. Take it away, Okkervil River. Okkervil River live on KEXP, the new album In the Rainbow Rain. Tonight they're playing at the Wonder Ballroom in Portland, Oregon.
All right. This song is the second one on the record, immediately following Famous Tracheotomies. It was written immediately after we got off that tour in November 2016, right before the recording session. And it's called The Dream and the Light. A limousine to the infusion suite, down a rainy street, early dawn, eyes that sweep, skin that feels, and the swish of wheels, and the radio. All the feeling we shared on the car ride, all the fear that was there on the other side, all the souls that were spared, oh, and those that we left out to die. You fell from the nest in your suicide vest. They tapped a decree from their side of the screen. It's Father's Day for the father in me. Oh, bachelor prince, oh, brain on 2 feet, oh, master of wandering meat, all ghost-faced in oxidized green, increasingly inward, involved and cut off from the scene.
That sounded fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. We're live here in the KEXP studios. It's Okkervil River, songs from the new album In the Rainbow Rain. Well, it's always so great to see all of you.
Thanks so much for having me, Cheryl. I appreciate it. It's
Thank
so great
you.
to be here.
You've got to tune to KEXP Seattle.
Discover new music at KEXP.org.